Australia's retail sales rose by 0.6% in January, less than the 2% expected by market forecasters. Queensland saw a fall in spending on household goods, clothing and footwear as Brisbane's three-day snap lockdown took effect. Overall sales remain higher than January 2020. That was before the pandemic. Activity has been volatile over the past several months due to those various restrictions. Joining me live is Evan Lucas, Head of Strategy at InvestSMART. Does it just show these snap lockdowns, people say it's only a few days, they are a grinding halt on economies?
They are indeed, Tom, and I think that's the best way to take it out of you, because it will be the February numbers where we get the back end of January where there was lockdowns going across in New South Wales and also then down here in Victoria. It shows you those numbers that have been coming out around what happened over the last 5-day lockdown in Victoria, about how much money was actually lost. And what will be very interesting for the Victorian numbers when they do come out in a little bit, about 4 weeks' time, the weekend of Valentine's Day is always one of the largest days of the year. It goes along with sort of things like Cyber Monday and Black Friday sales, and along with end of stock taking sales as well, particularly the last week of June. So it will probably be harder, even more so than what we've just seen in Queensland. So very much watch Victoria. It also shows and goes hand in hand with what we know around employment and also next week's wage price indexes, that we know people are a little bit more confident they've got jobs, but the volume of sales is also up, but the value of sales is down. So we're not spending as much. We're spending on things, but we're not spending as much as we were. And that gets down to the fact that we don't have as much money as we did previously. And although we are back in work, it's more volatile work and more part-time work.
We're increasingly bargain hunters, perhaps. Hey, Facebook, all the focus on what's happened in Australia, but it's facing a global issue.
It is. And there wasn't a huge outcome on Facebook yesterday with regards to its share price. It did fall 1.8% over on the New York Stock Exchange. What was bigger, though, is that analysts in the US woke up and very much wrote several articles about Europe. Europe is watching our rules very, very closely, and the European Union is certainly considering something similar. That is their bigger fish to fry. If Europe was to actually do something like what we are suggesting we might do in Australia, that would be a material impact to revenue for Facebook. And that is the suggestion why they've trying to go down this route now, is to try and knock out the European threat that could come to their earnings. And that's there. The second part of it, the antitrust movement in the US is only getting stronger. And what happened last night may actually be another reason for regulators to go at them, so that they've got bigger issues for their revenue with regards to this rule over in the US and over in Europe. And it may explain why analysts are getting worried about it.
But that's really interesting, isn't it? So it was seen as Facebook flexing its muscle, but if you're talking about antitrust, which we talk about in Australia as competition issues, it actually shows the power of Facebook in a worrying way.
It does. And so what Facebook is facing is possible forced divestment. So if you look at that, it's things like Instagram is very much seen as a possibility of a forced divestment from Facebook, along with WhatsApp. And those two are incredible drivers of traffic to Facebook. So about 65% of their earnings comes from marketing, and most of that is actually flow through earnings, particularly from Instagram. So that is where that competition issue is that Instagram and Facebook are one and the same thing. It goes back to Google as well. Google's biggest competitor is its second biggest product, which is YouTube. It's the second largest search engine on the planet. So that's another one that Google is very much aware of, that it could be facing a forced divestment of. So that's why this is a bigger story than what's just happening here in Australia. This is the big tech very worried about having to possibly being forced to divest products over in the US.
Evan Lucas, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.